Today, we're going to be talking about side control. It's the most basic position where you can technically say that you're in control or you're out of trouble. However, in Jiu-Jitsu competition, I feel like it gets a bad rap because the position itself doesn't score any points. You do, however, score a point. For example, if you were both standing, you attempt a takedown and you land a clean takedown, meaning that when you hit the ground, you're past your opponent's guard. That will get, and if you hold that position, it's side control, you get the points for the takedown. You don't get points for the position. As opposed to if you land in your opponent's guard, you get advantages for the takedown, but which is only good for if the match is tied at the end of regulation. The other thing in the competition is that if you are in your opponent's guard and you pass it and you get the side control and you hold the position for 3 seconds, you get the points for the pass, but not again for the position, because the position is inherently worth 0 points apparently. I think the reason for that is that it's not seen as a better position or a more dominant position than mount and back control, which are the highest scoring positions in competition jiu-jitsu, worth 4 points. I think that also it's considered a midway transitional position to move from like passing the guard to a more dominant position such as mount or back control, depending on what is available. So therefore it's like a stepping stone and not an actual position. But I think that's wrong, because honestly, if you do it right, side control is a really good weapon. If you do it right, you can get so much out of side control without needing to go to a more dominant position. The other thing I want to add before we continue on is I believe also that side control is also one of the first most basic positions where we see the basic point of contention. If you excuse me here, I want to use big words so I seem smarter, like some kind of jiu-jitsu genius. We see the basic point of contention between the two combatants, and these are the basic point of contention that I'm talking about is the contradiction between the objectives or goals of the person on top and the person on the bottom. What do I mean by that? What I mean by that is they contradict each other. Let me explain. The person on top, his goals and objectives is to control his opponent on the bottom. The goal of the person on the bottom is to not be controlled by the person on top so that he can get out of the position. Control is a term that I will use. It's a very general term. It includes, but it's not limited to, pinning. But which is the more relevant term for this particular jiu-jitsu back and forth episode, pinning. And pinning is defined as when you have your opponent's back flat on the mat with both of your shoulders down on the mat. In wrestling, whether it's Olympic wrestling or catch wrestling or WWE even, or even judo, where you can win by pin, pins can be the end of the match. But in jiu-jitsu, pinning is only the beginning. The reason why pinning is so important is because you want to hold down your opponent so in a way where they can't move, or they move very minimally, so that you're able to easily impose your will on them and do what you want. On the other hand, we look at the person on the bottom, whose main goal is to get unpinned. And by that by the simplest form of being unpinned is to just get one shoulder off the ground. The reason for that is when you're pinned, when both of your shoulders are flat on the ground, on the mat, it's very difficult. While it's not impossible, it's very difficult to explode and make an explosive movement to get out of that position. Which is why it's important to get to your side or get to your belly or all of that stuff. And this is why there are a lot of movements that they teach you in your first few jiu-jitsu classes when you first start out, such as the shrimping and the bridging and even the pendulum, which is a little bit more advanced than shrimping and bridging. those movements are designed to get you out of trouble when you're pinned. And we will show that a little bit later. First, we'll talk about the top game. As mentioned earlier, the objective of the person on top is to pin his opponent with both of his shoulders on the ground. The reason for this is very simple. It's because when you pin him properly, he won't be able to move. And if he's not able to move, it's easier for you to impose what you want to do on him. So I'm going to teach you guys how to do that. This is not the right way to do it, by the way. I'm just chilling. The first thing you have to remember is that there should never be space between you and your opponent. So you try to close the gap as much as possible. The second thing you have to remember is chest-to-chest pressure. Your chest has to be on his chest, like so, like this. And then the next thing is the crossface, where you're going to put your hand under his head, and you're going to just to control his head so he can't move. And then on the far side arm, you go underneath like an underhook, and then you clasp your hands together, and then you're pinning him. You're on side control, and it's very good side control. You're immobilizing him now. You don't want to have space in between yourself, your body, and your opponent's body, because if there's a little bit of space, a tiny bit of space, he might be able to move and he can get out. So you have to be very tight. And your chest-to-chest pressure has to be very tight as well, because you don't want him to push you off. So that's how you do side control position, like this, very basic. But I'm going to add one more detail. Again, I'm going to chill for this. The next thing you have to remember, and that's what I want to teach you guys, is called dynamic pinning. Dynamic pinning is basically this, except when your opponent tries to get out, you can put your weight down, your pressure down on him consistently, and still move. And in order to do this, we go back to side control like so. And the only difference is, you're going to activate your feet by putting your toes up and lifting your lower body to the point where your knees are off the mat. What's going to happen there is that it's going to be a little bit more pressure than compared to this, plus you're able to move. You're more mobile. So you're doing this, and then you can move. So if he moves, you can move with him, and then you can go back. And if he tries to move again, you make adjustments. That is what we call dynamic pinning. So the person on the bottom's goal/objective is to escape the position. In order for them to do it, they should avoid being pinned. If that's not an option, and they're already being pinned, the one thing that they can do that's simple, and I'm going to write down here, as a pin, is to just try to get on your side. Okay, it's not quite as simple as just doing, like rolling around like this, obviously. So then, you're reminded of the movements that you do in your first couple of jiu-jitsu classes. The shrimps, the bridges, the pendulums, as well as the combinations of those, like shrimp and bridge, or the bridge and shrimp, or pendulum to bridge the shrimp, or shrimping twice just to make space. So remember, the things that you need to remember when you're in the bottom of side control, and we're going to pretend that somebody's on top of us, is to make sure that you make a little space so that you can do those movements, or a combination of those movements. Because the goal here is to at least, the very least, get on your side. What you want to do is you want to be pushing
this way, like pushing off of it. So like when you want to do a hip, when you want to do, so if his body is here and his head is like right in this vicinity right here, you want to hold, you want to do a prayer position so you can use your, not your hands, but your forearms to push. But you can use your hands on his hip, because his hip will be right about here. So you want to push, and then you want to do a shrimp, go that way, like that. Or if you want to do a more explosive shrimp, you get on, you bridge first, and then you shrimp. And you put out that way. And when I said it's a double, now what I called a while ago is a double shrimp, is if you can't explode and do a bridge and shrimp because your butt is too big for whatever reason, such as mine, you just push it, push away, push off of it, and shrimp, then shrimp again. So you do 2 shrimps, make the space, and if you manage to get your body far away from his head, you can always flip around and sort of get out of it. So the idea here is just to make enough space, to get on your side, because explosive movements from the ground start from the side, or basically start from not being pinned. So escape the pin, make space, get out. That's how you get out of that. Not going to get into any specifics because this is kind of a theory class. But there are a lot of basic side control escapes that they probably teach you within your first few months of Jiu-Jitsu when you're a white belt. If you want to get into specifics about that, we can do another video, or you can look it up on Google. But yeah, I'm probably going to do another video how to specifically do that. I might have already done it actually. So there you go. So another reason why side control isn't worth any points in Jiu-Jitsu is because it's seen as sort of a transition position from passing your guard into something that scores more like a mount or side control, or getting a takedown, landing not in guard, then getting into, you know, mount. So I will show you some of the things that I do when I'm in side control, so that I don't stay in side control. I usually try to attack, specifically the far side arm. But if their defense is really good, I try to do different things. I try to move around. So the first thing I want to do, it looks kind of like this, but I'm going to go back to side control. So I'm back in side control. The thing I like to do is I like to go for Keshigatami, which is basically side control. It's a different kind of side control, but it's a different kind of side control, but you're facing towards his head. So what you're doing is you're going to move, base out your leg that's nearest his head, and then you're going to use the other leg and you're going to kick it out like so. And you switch base and you grab his arm, like so. I like to control people this way, because if they move, I can follow. But of course, I don't want my weight to be too far this way, because I can get swept that way. But so instead of chest to chest pressure, the side of my body is on his chest. So there's 2 ways to do Keshigatami. I prefer to do it this way, the double underhook version, because the other way is to grab his head like this. Now what's going to happen here if you do this is it's kind of like a headlock, but the other half, the far half of his body is free. It can move. And it's very risky, because if I shift my weight just a little bit too far this way, I can get moved, because there's a lot of free space on his far side of his body. So I prefer to get double underhook Keshigatami, because, you know, and then I can step over, get an arm bar or something like that, or I can, you know, get the north-south and then attack Kimura, which is something I like to do as well. Then there's the other thing, the reverse Keshigatami, which is basically the same movement except you're going the other way, towards his legs. What that's going to do is that's going to make it easier for you to transition to a mounted position. So I'm going to go back to side control. Remember that I'm switching base the other way towards his legs. So what I want to do is I want to remove the gable grip I have on the far side underhook and the crossface, and I want to change to the crossface, and I want to put my elbow on his other ear and get an overhook on the far side arm, and then I'm going to switch base this way. And what I want to do, basically what I have is like a double underhook, because I have control, and then so I switch base like this, and then I'm holding his armpit like this, so it's like an overhook, but my backside is controlling the underside of his near arm. So what I can do with this is I can go back, get the underhook from here, and then I can transition him out. And then I hold it. If I hold this in competition for 3 seconds, I get 4 points. That's reverse kesagatame.